Welcome, everybody. We're so proud to welcome you to our Exponential Digital Ethics series. We today will focus on cyber ethics in the digital era. I will first want to introduce Dr. Jane Thomason and Mr. Matthew Rosenquist. Dr. Thomason, would you please share with our audience why you think it's imperative for our society in the digital era to focus on ethics?
Ethics are the basic foundational principles upon which we run our societies. And the reason they're so important in terms of cyber is the exponential consequences of the ethical decisions that are being made. The speed and the scale of the impact of one decision can get hard-coded into a machine and can have consequences for billions of people. So it's vitally important that we think about how we convert something that's traditionally been individual decisions into frameworks and approaches that can be taken up in frontier technologies.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And Mr. Rosenquist, would you be so kind to share a little bit about your experience and what your global insights are regarding cyber ethics and the impact that it has on organizations as well as the individuals alike?
Absolutely. So I've been doing security for over 30 years and working with academia, working with governments, Fortune 100 companies and so forth. And, you know, as was previously discussed, ethics is a foundational aspect. It drives your business or how you treat your citizens. And so it has very, very important ramifications. And I think the world understands that. But what we're finding right now is the world is changing, and it's changing extraordinarily quickly. This digital transformation where we're embracing wonderful new technologies and devices and services, and we're weaving that into our lives every day, that then changes the dynamics and the old viewpoints, structures of ethics have difficulty moving into this much faster, much more connected, much more data-driven, individualized world. And so, yes, ethics has always been important, but as we're moving forward now with digital technology touching everybody, enriching everybody's life around the world, it also represents a new risk if we don't look at ethics in a new way that addresses this new paradigm, this digital ecosystem that we are all trying to thrive in.
One of the major concerns that we have, not only from individuals, but organizations and society as a whole, is how do we protect our privacy? And with that, we have to talk also about digital identity, right? We start to share our identity these days in multiple forums and in multiple devices. And the social media has caused quite a lot of attention to many data breaches over the last few months or years, so to speak. So can we maybe share some of our thoughts and experiences in terms of how can we safeguard our privacy better, and specifically in the context of the digital era, our digital identity and privacy aspects regarding that. Matt, do you want to start us off, and then Dr. Thomason right after?
Absolutely. So again, we're in an era right now where our identities are digital identities and the digital footprints that we have, right? Where we go, what we buy, who we communicate with, what our political views are, right? That is exploding in regards to the amount of data that's being generated and captured and then aggregated across. So, you know, something as simple as, you know, what you buy on your credit card, or who you're meeting, who you're having meetings with today, or who you connect with in social media, where you browse. Every single web page you've gone to, there's been a web browser that's captured that for the most part. And it creates a digital profile. And this is something new. Back in the analog world, it really wasn't possible, not anywhere near this scale. And it's done automatically because we've got all these systems and now AI to aggregate everything. So part of the problem is making sure that your identity, as well as everything, all the metadata that's associated with it, is private. So it's only used for what you expect it to be. And everybody has a role. Each of us individually should be very concerned and careful in who we share that with, what services and products that we use, and whether those organizations are gathering that information ethically and using it. We also have to worry about the companies that, as for shareholders, are those companies acting in an ethical way, or will there be potential backlash? And we're starting to see that, especially with the data breaches, but also in privacy and how data is being handled or shared or potentially used to manipulate people. And moving forward, it's going to become more and more of a competitive advantage. So there's lots of tension in the system. We all have roles to play, and there is no single easy solution. This is about discussions. It's about finding that optimal balance between the technology, the behaviors, and the processes and frameworks that we can apply to protect our privacy.
Thank you. And I have to agree. Actually, this morning I was part of an event where we had about 100 something participants from all over the world. And it was interesting to see how the opinions are so split, and you constantly have a push and a pull and concerns regarding the individual desire to maybe have access to global financial inclusion and many other elements that we all strive for. But on the other hand, then you have the colleagues who go, oh, wait a minute, if we're starting to go down this path, we're opening up a honeypot for cybersecurity attacks. So I wanted to hear maybe, Jane, can you share your opinion and your experience globally as well with working with so many international organizations? What do you feel is the pulse and the trend?
Well, look, I think it's both vexatious and confusing. I live in a country where people really object to this idea of a national identity, and yet because they don't want the government to have their data, and yet at the same time they are willingly providing their data to everyone that they interact with. And I think too, there's an element of this instant gratification. You go on a site, you want something that's on that site, they're asking you for more information than you really feel like giving them, but you still want that thing, so you give them the information and you've lost sight of what you've just given away. So I think there's this kind of bipolar relationship that we have with privacy, where on the one hand we give it to everyone, and on the other hand we object to government getting access to our data. And we really have to kind of reconcile what privacy means, but it's also an issue around data ownership, because this is one of the debates that's going on globally, is at the moment, probably everyone owns your data but you. Whether it's health data, you're giving it to the hospitals, you're giving it to the doctors, you're giving it to the radiology providers, all of your shopping data and travel data and insurance data you're giving freely away. And so people are trying to further develop this concept of self-sovereign identity, where you own your identity and you own your data, and people are devising ways technologically for you to permission people to use it. But at the moment, it's Wild West as far as personal data is concerned and privacy is concerned. And anyone who thinks that we have any is deluded and living in a past century.
I agree, and because you mentioned self-sovereign identity, that's another one that I noticed a lot of split opinions, because on the one hand, yes, for certain industries, this is what seems appropriate, but then there are other industries where people say you can't, because people can't really give informed consent for certain domains within the industry. They don't understand to give an informed consent for being able to use their data. And one example I like to always give is genomics, right? Many people, you explain, okay, do you give consent? Yes, I do. They will swear they gave consent to you and they will validate it, but do they truly understand the potential consequences? No. And then I agree. I see the same thing internationally, that even amongst us that are in the digital tech space and considered futurist, we still have a variety of opinions versus from choosing between a federated model or centralized model or completely decentralized. So you have people arguing nonstop. 2 weeks ago, we were at the European Union Commission, and same thing, you had a panel of experts and each one of us had a different stance on how much to decentralize and what to decentralize and what belongs in certain super secure private keys versus public keys, and who's going to be the owner of the private keys. So the more you talk, the more you understand that there are differences in opinion. There's no easy solution. So Matthew, we have, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to raise the issue, and Matthew, I'd be really interested in your thinking about this, is that we've been brought up in an era where our social contract, if you like, is with our self-sovereign government to look after these issues for us. We've now moved into an era where our individual country governments can't govern what's going on the internet. And so how do we move to this new era of global governance when our model for governing is from another era? I'd love to hear.
I mean, if you look globally, right, there is no single global government. So right now you've got several hundred countries governing their own kind of way. And even in the EU, where there's a lot of collaboration, still independent governments and independent societies have their own perceptions, and they may layer things on. So I don't foresee any time having a cohesive strategy, plan, tool set, processes. It will always come down to the individual countries, societies, and the populace there to figure out what the right balance for them. And when we look at individual countries, some of them fully expect the government to help them and protect them. Other countries, the government is just mandating it, and the populace is okay with that. And then you have other countries that say, no, no, no. You know, we want to control our privacy. We want to be the stewards, even if we're not very well informed. We do want to have that control and not relinquish that to the government. But this is something we're going to be talking about over the next 5, even 10 years. And we're seeing governments make steps forward. So for example, Singapore just recently came out and said they are going to start treating the internet in their country, right, and intra-country networks as basically a critical infrastructure akin to providing clean water or sanitation. It's something that's required that the government will provide. So and the details are fuzzy. We're not sure what that's going to mean, but the government's going to take very proactive steps to help clean and protect the internet for each of their citizens. And again, if you start looking at the bigger picture, all of the critical infrastructures nowadays have some dependency on the internet some way, somehow. So whether it's electrical power or food distribution or water, sanitation, all those, it's all now linked in. But again, there's going to be tension in the system. And it's really going to come down to probably a lot of debates in those individual countries to figure out what the right balance for them is. We're going to see the pendulum swing back and forth across the countries and across the globe, trying to hammer this out. That's the only way it's going to happen, the only way that I can see.
And I think the other aspect of that is going to be this whole tension between individual rights and collective benefit. And that's going to be at the heart of a lot of these debates.
Absolutely.
Agreed. And again, if the individuals don't understand the ramifications to some of their actions, it becomes a really difficult conversation to have, to get to a conclusion that everybody is, or compromise that everybody accepts. It's difficult if people don't understand that. So I think one of the first things that has to happen is awareness and education for all of us in this new space, this new realm, especially when it comes down to what are the consequences, what are the risks, what are the best practices.